You really realize how big the sucker is when you put it up on sawhorses. The sawhorses don't even hold it up off the ground. So this is going to be a bear to paint, I imagine, because I'm going to have to get down all those nooks and crannies there. I'll have to figure something out, because I don't think this will work for painting. But I need to fill these holes, and I'm going to do my tried and true. I'm going to put the metal disc behind them with JB Weld and let that dry, and then fill in there with Bondo afterward. And that way that metal disc should hold nice and solid behind there, so it won't vibrate out and start showing the circle again. That's been my experience anyways, it actually works, whereas if you just put Bondo in here, eventually that circle will reappear due to the vibrations and so forth. So I'm going to clean the back sides of all of these with at least alcohol or lacquer thinner or something, so that the JB Weld has something to stick to. And then, like I said, I'll put the metal disc behind each one, just plop it up there with a piece of, they call it silver tape. It's used for ducting, but it's real sticky. That's what I've used in all my other videos, but it works well. That's how I prep them. I will mix up the JB Weld and then go stick it. The tape will hold it in place while the JB Weld sets. I leave the tape on just as an extra precaution, although it's not necessary once the JB Weld hardens. Looks like that mixed. Just bring it up behind here. And that will give us a nice solid piece to bond to with the Bondo. Bondo is one of those things that seems like it's more of an art than a science. Bondo is basically an epoxy. You've got your main product and your hardener. The more, and see, like, hardener's all separated in the tube, which is not good. The more hardener you put in, the quicker that it's going to set up. If you don't put enough in, then it never really seems to set up and just kind of stays a gel, which is not good. If you put too much in, then it sets up too fast and you can't really utilize it for what you're doing. And I don't really have a good rule of thumb for how much to use. I just try to get it to mix to somewhat of a pink color. And I'm sure there's people watching this cringing that I'm mixing it wrong. I see some people that literally do the scrape and release or whatever, but I just try to get it mixed thoroughly, because any parts that aren't mixed will not harden. And then if you have to sand them, like I said, you're basically sanding the original product, which has got more of a pudding texture to it rather than something that will sand nice and smooth. And it's amazing when you're working with this stuff, you literally, it'll be nice and liquidy like this, and then you'll blink and it'll be a solid mass. And again, with filling these holes, it is more of an art. It does seem to shrink up, so you kind of want to use more than what you might think. I'm not the greatest at this. A lot of times I have to do it twice to get it filled in with no air bubbles. So maybe don't follow me for how to do it as much as just seeing that it can be done. And this one over here is a mess because it's not sealed on the back side. I can say the more you scrape off, the easier your sanding job will be later. However, it also typically means filling again because it does seem to shrink down, and I haven't figured out the ideal amount to use to get it to fill the first time and not require a second or third or fourth application of Bondo to get it smoothed out and looking the way I want it to. So again, I may not be the best one to learn this from. That is about the best I can do on a first try. And then, like I said, I'll usually have to go back over it a second or possibly third time to get it completely filled and smooth and at least somewhat resembling something that could be painted and not completely obvious that there was a hole there. Although usually with my work, if you look really carefully, you can see where I've patched things. But not always. Every once in a while I get lucky. So again, if you got any tips or suggestions, not just me, but everybody watching this video, I'm sure would love to hear what I'm doing wrong or what I could improve upon. Those of you that are really good with Bondo, you can go ahead and laugh at that. But like I said, if you don't get it above the surface, then you'll have holes or divots, and they'll show up real noticeably. So I know it's kind of a bear to sand down this much when it hardens, but I still find it easier than trying to deal with having it below the surface. Like I said, if I keep smearing this, it just pulls it around and makes it worse rather than better in my experience. So like I said, if you have a tip, please share. All right, there's after sanding. I used a little 2-inch disc sander. I had to do 80, 180, and 240 to get it smoothed down. That's how much Bondo I put on. Like I said, I'm sure there's a way better way to do it than what I do. But the main thing is you want to feel, and anything that you can feel with your fingertips is going to show up. Okay, so you want it to literally be perfectly smooth. If you have to go back over, sand some more, fill some more, whatever, like this one, there's a little bit of a ridge. It feels like it kind of bubbles, and that will show. Now, number 2, when you're going to mount 4 new parking sensors, you need a number divisible by 3. Okay, so bear with me here. So for example, 54 inches would mean you'd put 1 there, 1 at 36, 1 at 18, and 1 at 0, because 54 divided by 3 is 18. So every 18 inches you'd have a parking sensor, and those would go across. So they'd be in a little bit different location. You see, got 1 there, 36 is right there. Got 1 there, 18 is right there. These were 25 apart, and then I imagine, I don't know what I was doing before. Obviously I was mounting them also outside, and I think it works fine to do it here. Kind of like what I got on the P7B. Mark those with tape, and it's not a bad idea to step back and look and make sure that it looks like you've got it pretty much where it needs to be, because obviously wherever you start your 0, you want it to be as far away from the end as the 54 or whatever numbers you're using. Like I said, I used 54. You can use anything divisible by 3. They're just going to be closer together. Or if you went up to 60 or 57, they'd be farther apart. You could go 51, 48, and so on. Probably 48 would be too close on a bumper like this, but smaller car, 48 might be perfect. Anyway, 54, and hoping that these are approximately the same from the edge. Now I went ahead and marked the halfway point, and I'm going to go ahead and drill now, just because there's always a chance of your drill slipping, even using the tape. So the reason I went ahead and drilled now is since I'm painting, like I said, just the slightest chance that the drill slipped and scratched up the new paint would really piss me off, or if the tape that I put in peeled off the new paint, anything like that. So this way, hopefully it'll be nice and easy. Now I will mask tape underneath these holes for when I paint so that this doesn't get on the inside of anything, but honestly, even if it did, it's not the end of the world. Alright, this is my first time trying primer out of the spray gun. This is the primer I used. I was shocked it's kind of a whitish color at a 1.8 tip on my primer gun. I was trying to spray it about 30 psi. I don't think that was enough for this paint gun and product. You see it's got a very grainy finish. However, hopefully it will dry better. Definitely gonna have to do a second coat. I want to make sure that those spots are covered and that you can't see them. And right now you can see them, so that will be a problem. And also want this to be smooth, or I'm gonna have to sand, because texture like this will show up in your paint. But yeah, first time trying, I think I did a pretty decent job, all things considered. It does seem like you need to spray a little slower or something, or I may have to bump up the air pressure or something like that. Alright, that time I used acetone to thin it. Basically, I did 2 parts primer and 1 part acetone. I don't really say what they recommend, so I just sort of make it up as I go. But that seemed to do a much better job of thinning it out, laying it down smooth. So even though it says right on the bottle that you can spray it as is, I really do think thinning, reducing, whatever you want to call it, is definitely the way to go with every paint product. So that came out so well. I'm really torn on whether to do another coat. You can sort of still see those 2 spots. And little bit there, but I feel like the base coat will cover it, but this one, it's totally covered. So let's let this dry. I think this is 30 minutes. Probably to go a little bit longer because it's not all that warm today. It's 69 degrees in here. In fact, I mean, it's late enough. I'll probably let this dry overnight and then do the base coat tomorrow rather than trying to rush it. So I would say this came out really nice. For some reason, another bug landed. One landed right next to that. I got it off of there. That was right after the last base coat. It landed on there. I think I did a pretty good job of getting it off of there without it showing. That one obviously landed on the clear. Hopefully that'll be easier to get off of there. Anyway, probably my best to date paint job. Hopefully I'll just keep getting better. Still have some room to learn on the body work. You can see where I plugged those holes still, but overall it's looking so much better than it did before I started. Don't know what's going on there, but overall it's beautiful. Being an OCD perfectionist, of course, you could pick this thing apart and drive yourself insane trying to get it absolutely perfect, which I tend to do from time to time, which is why I've redone a lot of these. But I think I'm gonna stop with this one and just say, you know what, I did a good job. Drive with it. It's gonna get dinged up. Dirt's gonna scrape across it. Whatever. Hopefully I won't bump into anything or anyone bump into me, but you never know. Anyway, there you go. You saw me do it. You know, reducer and thinning the paint is probably the best thing I've learned as far as paint. And just, you know, if you start seeing any kind of problem pop up, stop. Don't keep going. That was a mistake I've made many times. So yeah, so she's been looking naked without that on there. So she'll be glad to get that back. I'll let it dry overnight and put it on tomorrow. So it's got to go one more day without. And at the same time, I will install the new parking sensors just in the rear. That's going to be super easy. All I got to do, find in there where I've already tapped into the reverse light and run that down over here somewhere, and that will be the hot that controls the box. I've already got the wire ready to go for the little indicator up by the dash, and since I've already pre-drilled the holes, I'll be able to run the sensor wires somewhere along here and then back up through that hole there that already exists. So that probably won't even take me 5 extra minutes compared to just putting on the bumper cover.